Hi, this is a Jing to further explain how to develop your social studies unit using this guide you see on the screen. And I do want you to use this guide as the criteria for what you're going to and how you're going to write your unit. And the first step is to begin generating ideas for a topic. You can look in textbooks that you may have or you may have seen, or that you can get online, or you can get at a library or at a school where you might know somebody who teaches. And I want you to pick a grade level, and then in this step I do want you to write several different topics that you're thinking about, maybe a little description of the topic, and then I want you to pick one of those that you're going to use for a unit and explain why you picked that topic. Then the second step is for you to research that topic, and you may come up with 25 resources. Well, I don't want you to include a packet of 25 resources, but you may summarize what you found and add that piece to this step here. Now you may be asking, do I write the step and then put a paragraph about the step, or do I write just paragraphs and talk about what I'm doing in each step? That's up to you and your creativity and how you want to design your unit. But I do want you to use this criteria, and I do want you to make sure you include all of the steps. You may take the steps out of order, but make sure I can identify the step as you're going through, and as I'm reading I want to be able to identify what you've written and which steps you have used in your unit, which should be all of these. Now, before I go ahead further, I do want to explain the page numbers correlate to the textbook, chapter 8, and you can refer to those, and that gives you some more information, and I will be referring to those as I speak to you in this Jing. Anyways, we're back on the second step, and you've summarized the research, and the research could include additional information that you're finding on the topic. It can include activities, it can include websites, it can include some resources such as books or articles that you're going to possibly use in the unit, or your students will use. And then as you move on to step 3, you're to develop focus or guiding questions. And if you look on page 250, it does give you some examples of those guiding questions, and what the textbook says that without essential or focused questions, it is difficult to help students see the main point. Focused questions help students to link with their prior knowledge as well as establish a rationale for studying the unit. So for a single unit, several questions are appropriate. And there is more information about these questions to help you out at this point in the textbook, and I would highly suggest you read that if you are wondering if you're on target with the questions you have. To me, they are overarching questions, not lesson specific, but questions that students will be thinking about as they move ahead and learn the material and the information that you're going to provide them for this in this unit. As you're planning your unit, you need to think about how you're going to accommodate special needs of students and what that will look like. And you may not be able to answer this part of the guide until you finish your unit, because it may look different if your unit incorporates a field trip, for instance, to some museum or some place where you may have some students who either have a physical disability and need additional assistance, or maybe a student who has been identified with ADHD, ADD, and you need to make sure that there is a teacher aide or a parent who is going to spend time with that student, especially if you're out of the classroom. So you may need to think about that as you are planning your unit, and of course you think about all of the needs of your students. This is also a place where you might think about multiple intelligences and how you're going to address those in your unit as well. Moving on, you're going to develop some intended learning outcomes, and if you look on page 251, the textbook indicates that intended learning outcomes are statements of what the teacher wants the students to learn. Learning outcomes are not activities that the students do during the unit. They're just what you are thinking about, what you want the students to learn. And then you're going to categorize your learning outcomes as either knowledge, skills, or attitudes. And if you look on page 252, you're going to find more information about how to do that. That's pretty simple, but it does take some thinking in regards to categorizing what learning outcomes you already have planned. Then you are to create a web, an idea web. And again, if you're looking on page 252, there are several webs identified here. If you know of another web that you would like to use, and to me, webs are like graphic organizers that help you to put your ideas into place and have a structure for your unit, you're more than welcome to use whatever you're the most comfortable with. If you've never created a web, then try one of these. Following the web, you're to develop a rationale and goals. That's on page 254. And what you need to be thinking about are reasons why you are teaching the unit and how the unit rationale is communicated to the students. You're going to be thinking about how the unit is relevant, how does it affect the future of your students as well as their current individual needs and interests. How does the unit examine societal issues, and how will your students deal reasonably with those? Is your unit developmentally appropriate for the grade level of your students? And how is your unit a self-learning enterprise? That's an interesting concept that you should think a little bit more about. Then you're to begin a KWL chart. And you say to yourself, he's asking me to create a KWL chart when I don't even have students that I'm going to actually implement this unit with? And my suggestion here is that you need to think about the questions you're going to ask your students about the topic so that you can get some needed information, an assessment of what they already know. So what I want you to do is to generate some questions about how you or get them to respond to you in regards to what do they know from their previous experiences or their previous knowledge. What do they want to know? So how are you going to get them to share what they want to know about the topic? So you're going to ask and formulate some questions that will help you to have them think about what they might want to know. And then at the end, what have they learned? This is kind of like some test questions or something, but it's not actually, but questions that you're going to use to get them to share back what they have learned. Again, you may want to wait and create these after you've developed your units so you have a better idea of exactly what you're going to do, what standards you're going to cover, what are your objectives you're covering. You have some learning outcomes. All of these things need to be thought about when you're putting your KWL chart together. Step 10 suggests that you add your California standards. Which standards are you going to meet by implementing this unit? That's important always. And it may be more than just the social studies standards. If you're going to integrate this unit with English language arts or with science or with math, you may need to incorporate some of those into your unit, and I would highly suggest you do that as well. Again, you can get these standards from the state education website, I'm sure all of you know that, or on our EAR page, E-A-R, and that is found in the Laverne website, and that is a page with many, many resources that will help you out. There's some really great multiple intelligence resources on that, and there's just a slew of other information that helps you as a pre-service teacher, a teacher candidate. Even I would use it as a teacher as well. From the standards, you'll move into your learning objectives. Now these are unit objectives and not specific to any one lesson, so you don't necessarily have to use the ABCD format. That's more specific to lesson objectives. These are more general. They're on page 256 in your textbook. It talks about how you can write these objectives based on your learning outcomes. And there are some examples of these as well. Step 12, you are to develop an assessment plan. Now what I want you to do is to read page 257 about developing an assessment plan, but I really want you to focus on the bottom paragraph on page 258 for the information that you are to use in this step. Now each of your learning outcomes should be assessed by a particular assessment. I want you to specify the assessments you plan to use in your unit, and then I want you to pick one assessment that you're going to further develop. Okay? It can be, you don't have to develop every single assessment you use, but you do need to pick one that you're going to, and then you're going to also share which learning objective, which learning outcome that is going to assess. And when we think about assessment, people in general like to think that we write our unit and then create our assessment. And really you should create your assessments before you write your unit, and then make sure that the content of your unit is what you are trying to assess. Step 13 is for you to develop activities for potential lessons. You do not need to create lesson plans here, okay? I don't want necessarily lesson plans, but I do want a list of activities, maybe somewhat in sequential order, if you can think of it that way, that you would use in this unit, okay? The unit, and I can't tell you, could be a 3-day unit or it could be a 5-day unit. You don't have to have one activity per day. You might have 10 activities over a 4-day period. In your mind, you need to think about what am I going to do each day, and then you want to make sure that you have incorporated those kind of things in that day. On the first day, I'm going to introduce, and I'm going to use this type of activity to introduce that, and that might be how you set that up. That's up to you again. Being a teacher, you can be very creative. You have to follow the state standards, and if your school has a curriculum, you have to use the curriculum as the basis to your teaching, but your activities and your instruction can be as creative as you want it to be, and that's what I'm looking for, a uniqueness here in your plan that is all yours. Then you are to develop some accommodations for technology, and that's again on page 259 in the textbook. You need to include possible types of technology that you're going to incorporate in this unit, whether it be something you use during the class time or you use after class, so you have sent home in a class newsletter for parents to reinforce at home. It could be an interactive lesson that you're creating. There are many of them for social studies, so that might be part of your unit. And then last but not least, and there are other steps in the book, but that's implementing the unit and then reflecting on the unit, which are, of course, necessary steps, but for the sake of this assignment, I want you then to make a bibliography or a list of your resources. And that should not be limited just to only one type of resource. Any of the information you receive from any of the resources should be included in here. So if it's websites, children's literature, teachers' books, articles, videos, any of that. And of course, I want you to practice using APA style 6th edition to cite your references, and you do need to do that, including your websites. I know sometimes it's very difficult, but that's one part of this. I want you to be practicing using that and making sure you understand it. There is technology on the library page to help you put your reference page together if you want to use it. The only thing I want to alert you to is that that Sometimes you have to go through and proof it because it does make a few mistakes here and there, but at least it puts all of your references and the information you type in into correct APA style. You just might have to edit it. And I would highly suggest you edit your whole unit, because grammar and syntax and spelling, all of those are also part of your grade here, and I want to make sure it looks professional and very neat. And again, I'm asking you to put this all in a Word document that you're going to attach to Blackboard, most likely in a wiki for your social studies unit. I think I've covered everything. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask me, ask your colleagues. If you find that it's really, you need some more clarification on something, by all means, don't hesitate to ask me. I wish you lots of luck. I hope you enjoy working on this unit, and I hope I've given you enough information for you to be a successful